Hi there, this is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority, with another Healing Matters. Jason Eagle QRA. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, all of these other platforms. Jason Eagle QRA. My website is strategichealing.us. And I am Jason Eagle, your natural health authority, with a video today about biofilms. Biofilms. What the heck are biofilms, Jason? Biofilms are, let's break it down. It's a word that says biofilm. Film, is it like a film in a camera? No, it's like the film that you get on your teeth. A film that forms, and it's bio. Anything that is bio means living. So it's a living film. What does this have to do with anything? Biofilms are essentially bacterias, in particular, bacterias and funguses and these things. They form these little homes. They basically think about it as like a Trojan horse. Okay. Anything that our body is dealing with, any condition that we are dealing with, whether it be pain, whether it be disease process, is all related to infection. Especially when we're talking about now and what we're going through, there's many different life forms that can infect us, basically get into us and start wreaking havoc, okay, attacking us, living in us, feeding off of us, replicating, basically having orgies and living within inside of us. Basically, kind of think of like the movie Alien. Alien is a life form. Basically, what it did, it sucked onto your face and then went down your throat, and then it grew its baby inside your body, and then blew up and escaped, and then kept doing that. And that's what a virus is very much like, but bacterias and all these other things, fungus. There's so many different types of things. Now, biofilms are essentially an adaptive process. This is really good. I'm going to read this to you. Okay. All right. What are biofilms? Biofilms are a complex microbial communities containing bacteria and fungi. They can also contain viruses. They can also contain parasites. So basically, it's a hodgepodge of a thing that these things live in. The microorganisms synthesize and secrete a protective matrix that attaches the biofilm firmly to a living or non-living surface. Now, a lot of so think about mucus and think about snot. Think about like, okay, we've got like the slippery snot, we've got the gooey snot, but think about those hard boogers that get really hard. That is a good example of what's called a biofilm, and that is a biofilm. Now, and it can have biofilms in it, but your own mucus is your body's secretion, right? Now, a biofilm is essentially a bacteria or fungus or virus or all of these things. If it's floating around in your immune system, in your system, basically it gets inside your body's immune system has, for instance, patrollers, okay? All these different cells, macrophages, white blood cells, these different things. Think about it as like the police, or think about it as like the military, basically patrolling an area and looking for imposters. Hey, where are your papers? Are you supposed to be here? Okay. Now, how does our body do that? Our body does that through chemicals and through electromagnetic frequencies. Also, what's called biophotonic emissions, kind of lights. That's how our body, so think about like back in the old days of when you saw these warships, they would use flags, which is called semaphore, in order to communicate with each other. They would also use lights and use like, lights to do Morse code. Beep, 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 beep. Okay. This is a function that our body does, but they are bodies too, okay? So you're the big body, but you have little living bodies. Now there's foreign things that are harmful for us, and there are healthy things. So when we talk about what's called the probiotics, the good things that live in your gut, and this is where a lot of these biofilms live, is they live in your guts, but they can get in through they live anywhere, okay? So our body, if you think about our body, you think that you're just yourself, right? Now we talk about probiotics, meaning I need to put these little good living things inside of me. Well, they do your digestion and everything like that. And actually, if you were to do a DNA analysis of what is you, and then all of the other living life forms, including the bad things that are the good and the bad and the ugly, only 2% of the DNA of your body is you. The rest of the 98% is them. So you're the smallest one at the party, right? But see, that's not bad. That's the way it's supposed to be. But when things get out of balance, then it can be bad. Now, there's always a fight going on because our immune system, as I said, is patrolling. So these things have developed armor, and they've developed little basically armored vehicles that they can get in, they can attach to. So plaque, okay, plaque and tartar. Just had my teeth cleaned today and they scraped that tartar. That's a perfect example of a biofilm. You know, you think that tartar, that calcium type of that, like, you know, crusty stuff that they scrape off your, now the film on your teeth, when your teeth feel kind of fuzzy, that's plaque, okay? That's a bacteria. That is a early stage of a biofilm. Now, a biofilm can then get to a point of where it actually attaches and becomes hardened, and it goes from starts off as what's called a polysaccharide sac. Saccharide, that's sugar. So it makes like a little sugar home, okay? And then eventually that sugar home then starts to solidify and become harder, and then it also starts to almost calcify, and then it can become like really hard mucus, and it can be attached to any surface of your body, including your bones. Now, this is really well known in the food service industry, okay? So biofilms are things that can form inside of restaurant equipment, and in particular, let's say those little frozen slushy machines, right? They got lots of sugar in them, and, you know, it's cold, things shouldn't grow, but they do. So, for instance, your Coca-Cola machines, they form these things called biofilms, and the guys that come in to clean them out, they are resistant to the disinfectants. They are resistant. You can't scrape this stuff off. So they have to discover new ways of cleaning material, especially even like the stainless steel pipes that have different food products in it that have sugar. They can grow these biofilms in there, and these biofilms can then infect the whatever. So you could be getting infected, getting sick from drinking your pop at the McDonald's, or getting your slushy, the slushy machine that you see going round and round and round. Well, over time, all of the pipes, all of the tubes, the faucet, all of these things, they develop these things called biofilms. Not just, as I said, they can form outside the body, they can form inside on a non-living surface. Biofilms are dynamic, heterogeneous communities that are continuously changing. They may consist of single bacteria or fungal species, or more commonly, polymicrobial, and contain multiple diverse species. It's an orgy. It's a hodgepodge of all these different things. Now, they don't talk about this here, but it also includes, so these can be like tumors and things like that, but it can include when you go and cut open a biofilm and then basically put it under analysis, put it under the microscope, you don't just find multiple types of bacteria, you're going to find multiple types of viruses, other life forms that are called mycoplasms. You're going to find fungus, which is mushrooms and stuff like that, like a fungal infection, that toenail stuff. You know, that toenail stuff that you get under your toenails where it grows really thick? That's a biofilm. Really, really thick and impossible to treat. Also, parasites. Parasites can live in these things and form these things. And so essentially, you just get kind of like a nightmare situation of these things living inside your body. Okay? At the most basic level, a biofilm can be described as a bacteria embedded in a thick, slimy barrier of sugar and proteins. The biofilm barrier protects the microorganisms from external threats. Now, why does it make sugar? Okay, a polysaccharide sac, which eventually then makes proteins. Why? Because sugar and proteins is not foreign to your body. So your body, when the immune system, with the phagocytes and the other of these patrolling cells of your immune system, your thymus makes these cells. That's what's called T cells. Your gut makes these. They're made all over your lymphatic cells, the white blood cells. There's a many different types of weapons, and they're patrolling. They're out there looking around. And if it sees a bacteria, a virus, a thing that's not supposed to be there, beep, 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 it puts its laser sights on it, and it goes after it, and it kills it. So a bacteria that's roaming around out in the open, it's kind of like you don't see a squirrel running out in the open in an empty field, right? Very often, right? They're up in a tree and they'll run very quickly. You don't see them hanging out there going doo-doo-doo-doo, filing its nails. Because why? Because a hawk is going to swoop in and kill it, or a fox is going to get it, and so they go from place to place to place, and they hide, right? Same thing like a shell. Snail shell hides in its shell. So what these bacterias and fungus and stuff like that, they're not dumb. In fact, they're very, very smart, and we'll talk a little bit about how they communicate. They are super smart, okay? And they're smarter than you. They're like the Borg. They will adapt, okay? And that's what we're dealing with. Let's say the Delta variant and many other different variants is these things are smart, and they will develop, and they'll get attacked, and then they'll figure out how they're getting attacked, and then they will go boop, 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 calculating, and they will figure out a way. Now, one of the ways that they've figured out is developing what's called biofilms. As I said, sugar is natural in your body, polysaccharides, as well as protein. Your body's made out of protein. So if it's able to make this shell out of something that your body's, and it makes it thick enough, then your body can't see through it, and it hides inside that thing. And then when your body's patrolling, it looks at it and goes, oh, you're supposed to be here, go about your business, you're fine. And that thing's living inside there. And what happens is they can then come out. Now, they're doing this thing called quorum sensing. And I'll talk a little bit about this later. But let's go on this. Okay. Let me go back to this first part. Okay. Stage 1, reversible surface attachment. Microorganisms are commonly perceived to be free-floating and solitary, like plankton, like I said, like that squirrel that's out in the middle of the field. However, under natural conditions, most microorganisms, and that's all of them, virus, mycoplasm, bacteria, parasites, they tend to attach to surfaces and eventually form biofilms, like they form coral. This initial attachment is reversible, okay? So when it's this slimy thing, it's reversible. And I'm going to talk later about this, what's called the biofilm purge. It's all reversible. If you do the right things, there are the right types of supplements and other things out there that you can get through these hard things and eventually melt them away. And then get your body to then get at that hard, shell and pass that hard shell to the soft, gooey inner center where they're living, and then your immune system can kill that. Cancer cells form these. Cancer cells are very well known for forming and living in biofilms. They form these hard tumor types of things, which is your body's immune system, which normally is able to kill cancer. Your spleen is one of these organs that's constantly patrolling. Your blood's going through your spleen and it's filtering out and it's killing cancer cells. Well, if it forms these biofilms, it can't get in there. It can't. But here's the other thing. They can get out, okay? Stage 2, a permanent surface attachment. As the bacteria multiply, they become more firmly attached and differentiate, meaning really they start to branch out and make all these different shapes, changing gene expression patterns in ways that promote survival. Biofilms can generate a drug resistance in bacteria. So when they say and it's not just the bacteria have, for instance, become drug resistant, which is if you keep putting people on antibiotics over and over and over again, the bacteria themselves and again, antibiotics are only effective on bacteria, not on viruses and not on other things like fungus. That's why you have to have an anti-fungicide, because antibacterials don't work on that. So yes, the bacteria get smart, but one of the things of how they get smart and one of their smartness is they create this shell that you can't get in and the antibiotic can't get in. So one of the important things about what's called an antibiotic resistant is not just the antibiotic or the bacteria have gotten smart. It's that they've gotten smart at greater defenses. And they've created these hard candy coating shells that even if you put acid on them that would normally have killed them before, doesn't kill them anymore because they've developed armor plating that you can't get through. There are things that can dissolve that, and I'm going to get to that. Okay? All right. Then they also provide an ideal environment for the exchange of what's called extra chromosome DNA, or what's called plasmids. Plasmids are essentially, these things morph. Now, also, plasmids are this level of communication. So now we get into what's called quorum sensing. This is something that Dr. Bob Marshall was famous for, working on this in terms of understanding how these things do. And I'll tell you another person who was famous, who's also no longer with us, and he's very similar to, didn't kill himself. That's John McAfee. John McAfee was this guy that came up with the McAfee antivirus, and then he sold it and said it was the worst program out there on the planet. He hated it. And then he eventually was traveling all over the world trying to escape because he was escaping taxes and things like that. But what he also did is he moved to Belize and he set up a lab. And they raided the lab because he was well known for doing drugs and all kinds of other stuff. He was a real vanguard kind of guy. But what he was doing is he was doing research on developing new types of antibiotics that were found in the jungles of Belize. And he was famous for trying to figure out this stuff called quorum sensing. If you can get ahead of them. So what is quorum sensing? Quorum sensing is this. Bacteria's communicate with each other, okay? If they're on the same team, they can communicate with each other, okay? Like if you speak one language, you can speak the language that you know. Let's say you only speak English, but if someone comes in with another language, you can't speak with them unless you have a translator, okay? So, and if you're a completely different species, you can't speak to a chicken. Chickens can speak to other chickens, but you can't speak to a chicken. Okay, you can see they talk, right? Quorum sensing is bacterias are able to communicate with other bacterias, also other different species of themselves. They're also able to communicate with viruses. They're also able to communicate with funguses. They're able to communicate with parasites. And they have three forms of this communication. And this was proven. I remember looking at a science article, which is they tried to figure out so one way that they communicate is through chemicals, chemical messengering. That's how an ant finds its way. That's also how bees find its way. You ever see an ant that's going and walking and they'll follow the same line? Well, the reason they're following the same line is they're using their feelers to smell. And what they do is they put pheromones down. They put a chemical trail. And so a chemical trail is something that is communicating. And so not only is it a trail that they can see, but like bees, they create these chemical signals that essentially is like a book or a video that says, I'm not going to just tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you the color it is. I'm going to tell you everything about it. So it's like chemical messengers are like a USB port or like a USB device or like a floppy drive, which is sharing the information from here to here. But they have to be able to touch, okay? So the chemicals have to be able to secrete from this cell, go through what's called the extracellular matrix, basically go through the goo of your body, and then go into their bodies, and there they communicate. So if they can be in direct connection to each other, then they communicate chemically. They can also communicate electromagnetically, which is basically walkie-talkie. They have cell phones, and they're able to magnetic, which is positive, negative. They're able to basically, if they can't use chemicals, they will use electromagnetic frequencies. They'll call each other with a cell phone call. Then they have another way of what's called biophotonic emissions. A photon is light can be in waves and light can be in photons, little packets of beep, 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 okay? Remember I talked about like that Morse code with the light? So they're able to communicate with each other. So let's say they get blocked and they're in one cell and then they can't get, and there's a barrier and they can't get through, so the chemical can't get through there. The electromagnetic frequency is able to get through there. Now, they did this by taking, say, bacterias and putting them in separate glass jars. And next to each other, they noticed that they can still communicate even though the separate glass jars are separating them. It can't get through the jars, it can't go through the air. So chemical was eliminated, but it was electromagnetic, okay? Then they noticed that when they put an electromagnetic barrier, meaning blocking them, but not the light, they were still communicating. And that, so when they had clear glass jars, they noticed that they were able to communicate through blips of light. So, but when they put them in dark bottles that were separated from each other, and also there was essentially a Faraday cage so that their electromagnetic frequencies couldn't get through, that's when they blocked them. This is one of the things that John McAfee was working on before he died, was he was trying to develop these things in terms of if you can stay ahead of, like World War II. We figured out what the Germans were saying before, and we didn't tell them that we knew what they were saying for many years because we were changing, and they did the same thing with us, right? Is being able to figure out what essentially your code is, okay? So if you can figure out quorum sensing, meaning how they communicate, because see, this is inherent to how biofilms work. Okay. So biofilms work by, one of the reasons they create this shell is so that they can protect themselves from your immune system. They can also protect themselves from your immune system's mechanisms of, let's say, a fever. A fever is a way of actually burning this out of your body. And it does. A fever will kill many different types of things because there's certain different things that can't live a certain temperature, okay? But when the biofilms form, they're a way of basically putting themselves in and shutting themselves out. Okay, but if they do that and they're locked away from ever, then they can't get out. Well, here's what they do is they can melt these shells from the inside out and get out. Now, when do they get out? They get out because what they do is they communicate with each other. So let's say you have an infection that's starting over here and your immune system is attacking it and your immune system is winning. What happens is they form these biofilms and they go into the biofilms and they hide. And then they basically stop fighting and a bunch of them die. And they know this, they know when they're dying. And so what happens is basically when they're losing, they will go in and hide, okay? Then when the coast is clear, and this can happen in different parts of the body. So one part of the body, infection, your body's taking care of it, but the other part of the body is left unchecked. And what happens is they'll communicate through your body and they'll send a signal and say, it's all safe here. And what happened, and that's why you'll see infections can go through an infection and then it goes away and then it comes back and then it goes away and then it comes back. The reason it comes back is because it waits for, and it never goes away. So chronic infections are a function of, on chronic conditions of inflammation and pain and all this other stuff. That's why even sometimes when we're dealing with, say, arthritic pain, sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. Yes, it can be affected by, let's say, barometric pressure. A storm is coming. Why? Because the storm squeezes your body and actually squeezes these things out. And then as your immune system, so keep in mind, when you're feeling pain, when you're feeling a cold of the sniffles and stuff like that, that's not when you're sick. You're sick when you didn't feel it. Before, so when you truly are sick so what we would call sick is your symptoms. That's your immune system. That means you're fighting. That means you're winning. Okay, now they're smart and they go back and hide. Okay, and then they shut themselves off, and then your immune system goes, okay, I guess we got them all, and they're all clear. And then they go away, and your immune system cells start to dwindle and start to go back into their homes, and basically there's very few patrolmen out on the street. Well, these things, through what's called quorum sensing, are able to communicate with each other. And so when you're dealing with this, you're never, ever going to win. When you're dealing with chronic infection, and everyone's got chronic infection, is you're never going to win unless you can attack the biofilms, unless you can melt those shells and keep them from forming and keep them from attaching, okay? A little bit more, okay? Once firmly attached, the bacteria begin to secrete a surrounding matrix known as a extracellular polymeric substance, or EPS. This is a protective matrix or slime. Small bacteria's colonies then form the initial biofilm. Then as these things go fully mature biofilms continuously shed planktonic bacteria, basically going boom, 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 making babies. Microcolonies and fragments of biofilm which can disperse and attach to other parts of, so this is very common in what's called wounds. So treating wounds, healing wounds, especially when you're talking like bed sores or really bad wounds. One of the things that they know is wounds that are really, really hard to treat, like MRSA and stuff like that. The reason that they're hard to treat is because, you can put antibiotic, sprays and stuff like that. But if these things form biofilms, especially in the wound bed, you have to be able to get through these things, because otherwise it just keeps growing and growing and they keep spitting these things out. Okay. So biofilms are also very common in wound care. Now we're talking about all these things, which is we're talking about chronic infection, sinus infection, gut infection. These forms inside the gut, inside the lungs. Biofilms can form inside the lungs. So people that maybe catch the virus and then are very susceptible, because of these biofilms, just create these, like I said, these homes, plus these factories of where it creates more of itself, basically, boom, 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 and then you just get to a point where your immune system just cannot fight back. But one of the reasons it can't fight back is because it can't get through these shells, can't get through to them. So let's talk about what's called the biofilm purge. Okay. All these antibiotics that we have formed, that man has created, there is something that God has created, that nature has created, that the biofilms and the bacteria have never been able to figure out, okay? So it's never been able to figure out what to do with garlic, like the vampires. It's never been able to get smart enough there is no garlic-resistant bacteria. Now, there's certain bacteria which are called sulfur-based and alicidin, or garlic, is a sulfur base. So when you get into antibiotics, there's sulfur, there's some non-sulfur, and so coming at it from multiple different ways. But the garlic is not only able to kill the bacteria, funguses, it is antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral, antiparasitic. It does everything. Okay, but it also melts the biofilms. It dissolves those sacs, those polysaccharide that eventually turn into like hard mucus calcium protein. It dissolves it. So alicidin is one of the things. Premier Research Labs makes this capsule called alicidin, which is a mixture of allicin, allicin is basically the power part of garlic. And so they concentrate it, but they also mix it with what's called bear garlic, and bear garlic or German garlic, very, very, very strong. Most people won't eat it because it's so garlicky, okay? So basically taking 6 capsules a day is one of the basics of the biofilm purge. 2, 2, and 2. 2 at breakfast, 2 at lunch, 2 at dinner, okay? This helps to melt the biofilm as well as kill anything that's living inside of the biofilm. Cardio-ND. Cardio-ND also has lots of garlic, plus they call it cardio because it's really good for cardiovascular disease. One of the top things that is related to cardiovascular disease is these biofilms. When you're talking about what's called atherosclerosis, that is the thing that creates a heart attack. That's the thing that grandpa needs to have, let's say, a quadruple bypass. Atherosclerosis is this plaque that starts not just on your teeth, but it starts to form inside your arteries and cause the blocking of arteries. This plaque is a biofilm. And so Cardio-ND helps to thin the blood. Allicin starts to thin the blood. It doesn't over thin the blood like like an aspirin or warfarin or something like that. So it's not dangerous. Although if you are on those products, you need to be careful with taking any extra blood thinner, okay? So maybe scale it back, okay? But the Cardio ND is also, like I said, has lots of garlic in it. And it's another thing that works as a biofilm buster. Cardio ND, you're doing about 1 or 2 teaspoons at breakfast and at dinner. That's another hit. It will help to stimulate. It's a cardiotonic. It's one of the earliest forms of cardiotonic with hawthorn berry and some other stuff. And it really does. Again, yes, Shannon says, I love garlic. You know, who doesn't love garlic? And I'm telling you, all of the blood diseases are the vampiric type of things, the blood eaters. They don't like garlic. And they also don't like vitamin C. Okay, vitamin C, scurvy. Scurvy is a blood disease. Okay, so when we're getting blood clots, people that are getting this recent jab, there's high levels of blood clots. I'm telling you, go on vitamin C, because any type of blood issue, whether you're bruising easily or whether you're getting blood clots or you're getting aneurysms or clogged arteries or any type of blood disease or heart type of thing, it's all a lack of vitamin C. So vitamin C, I'm recommending between 1 to 10,000 milligrams a day. You can take it at ascorbic acid, ascorbate. You can do it in its natural forms. However, I do recommend that you do some natural and you also do some of the synthetic, because you just cannot get enough of the natural. You can take it in a chewable form, a pill form. If you really are sick, you can get them in an intravenous. And I'm telling you, if you've got the jab, it's really smart to have high levels of, because there's lots of blood clots that are associated, lots of embolisms, pulmonary embolisms, brain aneurysms, these clogs, a lot of these things it's causing bleeds, it's causing lots of problems. So you got to get it, which I don't recommend, but if you are got to get it and you have got it, go on vitamin C. There are also even some clinics where you can get intravenous vitamin C, which is they'll basically put it right in your bloodstream, okay? I like the liposomal, which is these little packets, and it's like this, like this orange goo, and it kind of tastes like orange. It's very expensive though. So you can get ascorbic acid in a powdered form. The cheapest way is to get it in the powdered form. And, again, take your natural, eat your vitamin C foods, but also take lots of vitamin C. The other thing that's used as a biofilm purge is hydrochloric acid, HCl. That is what your stomach produces when you digest food. So we can help it to help to digest your food. Now, we can also take it on an empty stomach, and it is able to go through your bloodstream and it melts the biofilms. All of these things are biofilm busters. Garlic, vitamin C, and hydrochloric acid will melt the biofilms, as well as kill bacteria, kill fungus. Topically, even on a wound, you can put vitamin C, and you could even put hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid was the very first thing that was used in dentistry before we had bleach and other different types of, basically, how do I kill that rotting teeth? Or when they drilled it away, how do I get that thing from rotting into your bone? Or, for instance, they use hydrochloric acid in World War I, even in World War II, before mercurochrome, before iodine. When you had a person, so even back in Civil War times, what they were doing is they were putting and vitamin C. You can use vitamin C powder in a wound. So you got a person that got shot up and it's starting to get infected. They would put hydrochloric acid in there, and then that would eat away the bacteria, eat away the things that would turn into the infection and cure gangrene and keep gangrene from going. Now, keep in mind, when a person is healthy, hydrochloric acid that is secreted through your stomach, it goes into your food. It doesn't get pooped out. Actually, the hydrochloric acid gets reabsorbed through the small intestine, the large intestine, and get put back into the system. But some of it is actually shunted into different parts of the body. And so let's say you break a bone. When you're healthy, the reason that the bone heals so quickly is because your body sends hydrochloric acid to that. It also sends vitamin C. We don't produce, as humans, we don't produce vitamin C. We're vitamin C dependent, so we have to eat enough vitamin C. That's why they develop scurvy, right? Which is the sailor's disease, which is they would bleed out of every orifice, and that's why they gave them apples and oranges and lemons and these types of things in order to cure scurvy. However, Your body does store vitamin C. We have what's called storage form. And when your body is trying to heal a wound or is trying to heal an infection, it will send vitamin C. Now, if we're chronically fighting something or if we are under stress, we eat up our vitamin C reserves. So staying on vitamin C when we know that we're in trouble or we think we're going to get in trouble or we really want to protect yourself. If you want to protect yourself, rather than wearing this thing, this diaper on your face and all this other stuff, get healthy, have high vitamin C levels, have high vitamin D levels, have high vitamin E levels. Vitamin C and vitamin E are antioxidants. They are the top antioxidants, and they're antibacterial, they're antiviral, they will protect, they stimulate your immune system, plus they kill those things. So when you have high enough vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D in your body, if you breathe it or you attach to it and it comes into your body, it doesn't attach. It cannot replicate. It stops it from replicating. It also stops this thing from quorum sensing. It stops them from being able to communicate. Okay? So, but biofilms are basically, once they shut up shop, they are super hard to get rid of. Now, in the standard medical world, they're impossible to get rid of. You can't even scrape these things off. But if we start using these natural things, they will find, like even this antibiotic resistance, you can reverse that. You can change it in a person by, as I said, garlic, hydrochloric acid, and vitamin C. I think I told you vitamin, oh, and I didn't tell you how much of the hydrochloric acid. Typically, when you want to have good digestion, you take 1 to, let's say, 4 at the end of the meal. Basically, I like to take it with my last bite of food, take my HCl. I take about 3 to 4. Sometimes I take 6 per meal if I have a high protein meal. Ate a lot. I want to make sure I take lots of hydrochloric acid. Or if I'm sick or want to protect myself, or if I'm eating some kind of foreign food that maybe I'm a little questionable about that has anything on it. You know, the people that don't get food poisoning, that everyone else got food poisoning, they ate the same food that was poisoned. The people that have high hydrochloric acid and high vitamin C, but high hydrochloric acid, basically it kills that thing before it gets into the bloodstream. So 1 to 4 at the end of the meal, make sure you drink it with a full glass of water. And if you can start to tolerate it, you can take between 1 and 10 on an empty stomach. So a person who really wants to heal some deep bone infection, or whether it be Lyme's disease or something like that, you're taking not only with your food, but you're going to take 10 on an empty stomach 3 times a day. Now, for some people that's difficult and it can burn the stomach, so you have to build up a tolerance to it. So you start with 1. You take 1 on an empty stomach. An empty stomach is about 3 hours after a meal and about 30 minutes before the next meal, or as soon as you wake up. You could even just do the hydrochloric acid right when you wake up. Take 1 to 10, if you can tolerate that, with a full glass of water. I'm talking like a 10, 12-ounce glass of water. Gulp, 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 drink it down. And it will then, because there's no food to attach to it, it will go directly into your bloodstream and start scavenging and start melting these things. One of the top biofilm buster. And it's good to know. Biofilms are the reason that we're so sick and that it's so difficult for infections and things to heal, and why we have chronic infection that goes and comes and comes and goes. And I have it for a while. Why people get these chronic things, over and over and over again. Chronic sinus problems, chronic gut problems. These things are found in the brain. These things are found in every part of the body. They start to grow. These things are found in the joints. So the joints in particular, like if you got really bad knuckles, you've got really bad arthritis where they're all big and swollen and hardened, and those bad knuckles or bad knees, those are biofilms that are living inside those joints. And so if you can get the blood flow with these anti-infectives inside there, you'll start to melt them away, which not only destroys them, but then takes away their covering. So like tears their clothes off, they're standing there naked. And so now your immune system goes, aha, I see you. And it's able to go after it and destroy it and kill it and keep it killed and keep these things from forming. So once you get rid of them, staying on enough hydrochloric acid, keeping your garlic levels up, keeping your vitamin C levels up, These things cannot form. And if they do form, they form very thinly and then they get stripped away. And so this is one of the answers of maintaining really good health. If you're unhealthy, this is how you get healthy, but this is how you keep your health, how you stay on top of it. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. Till next time, thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. I invite you to press the like button because you liked what I had to say about your health. And also, press the subscribe button to be able to easily find me and also be part of this. I look forward to helping you reclaim your health naturally.